Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Anthenaeum Spotlight with Guy McLain here on Westfield Community Programming Channel 15 and on 89.5 FM WSAD and our new media partner, Southwick Community Programming. I'm Mark Auerbach, co-host. Guy McLain is in the studio with Ruth Kjaer, who is one of the artists who is about to be on exhibition at the Westfield Athenaeum. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you? And it's nice to have guests in the studio again.
Yes, yes. Well, it's exciting. We don't have to do everything by Zoom, even though usually you are in the studio, but this time you're on Zoom, so that's a little bit of a change. But it's
Yeah,
nice.
well, I don't really like doing Zoom for myself, so I'm envious that I can't be in the studio with both of you this morning. But you've got an exhibition opening with Ruth's work in just a couple of weeks. So why don't you fill us in on what this exhibition entails?
Yeah, at the Westfield Athenaeum, we're going to have a great show of featuring the art of Ruth Kjaer, who we have here in the studio today, and it's going to be a really blockbuster exhibit. We have a nice selection of paintings, and we have some very interesting themes that we're developing with this exhibit. And so we thought we'd talk to Ruth about it and get some ideas. So let me just start with the first question here. So Ruth, tell us about what inspired you to start as an artist.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to the whole experience. What really forced me into being an artist was the occasion that I actually started as a musician. My college degree is in music, but through several moves, I had lost connections with all of that, moved to a different state and so forth. So I decided to take my creative energy into another path. And I did that after also discovering 3 artists in a publication at that time, this is quite a long time ago, by the names of Helen Frankenthaler, Grace Hardigan, and Joan Mitchell.
I think that's interesting because they were artists that were at the center of abstract expressionism
That's
back
right.
in the 40s and 50s in America.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I was actually getting into abstraction at the time. I had done some more realistic work, but when I saw this pamphlet about them, I thought, wow, you mean this? Now, this is back in the early 70s, that there were actually women doing this kind of work. It was unusual, and they were really getting well known.
Yeah, and I think that's important to point out.
Yeah.
Women artists, of course, have not been given the attention that they really have deserve.
That's right.
And what's interesting about the abstract expressionist movement, which was a movement that really captured American art, was really the dominant style of American art in the 1940s and 50s, and actually established the United States as the leading art center. For the first time. It had always been Paris before,
Right.
but now abstract expressionism
Yes.
was really the leading force, the cutting edge in
Yes.
art in the 40s and 50s. And it's so interesting that several women artists, because
Yeah.
Helen Frankenthaler is a huge name.
Right.
Joan Mitchell
Yeah.
was doing tremendous work at that
Yeah.
time. And then Grace Hardigan was also
Right.
very important. So really three out of the top 7 or 8 artists that were kind of the leading artists of abstract expressionism were women artists.
That's
So
right.
That must have been really inspirational.
Oh, it
for
was
you.
extremely so. I really, blinked a lot because I couldn't believe that there were actually women in the whole stew of this abstract expressionist movement. There were a lot of men, but here were 3 women. So they were an extremely good influence on my getting into it.
Kind of a model to
Yes,
work from.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And so how did you develop your style? That using that as kind of a center. How did you develop your style from that?
Well, of course, with any form like this, it's of art, it develops. But as I began to do the abstraction, these, I was influenced by many of the abstract expressionists. What I did was, I was really located in kind of rural areas or unpopulated places, but I did find libraries and so forth. I went to the library and I checked out everything I could find to follow what these people were doing. I also tried to get to museums, and of course my whole life since has been getting to museums to see what everyone else is doing and what they're following. So I did a lot of study just on my own. I had family to raise too, so it was difficult to.
And I think that's important to say. I think
Yeah.
that's been a real problem for women to become professional artists, because it's a you have to be really dedicated.
Yeah.
And spend a lot of time in the studio and studying art and this sort of thing. And if you're trying to raise children,
Yeah.
that's very difficult. I think that's been a problem for women.
Yeah.
How did you manage
Yeah.
raising children and
I don't know.
developing your career at the same
I
time?
don't know how I did that. One of my daughters had very blonde hair, and she wound up with black oil paint in it. But I kept on, and of course got to museums whenever I could. And I've done that all my life. I've done a lot of traveling around the world, and I've gone to 30 different countries. And every place I go to the museum to see what is going on. And so I think that's...
Very, yes. And you told me that you spent some time in Haiti,
Oh,
which I
yes.
think that's very interesting. And how did that
Yes.
influence your art?
I made a trip to Haiti back in the late 70s, and it really changed my thoughts about aesthetics and many things. It really changed my life, in fact. Wonderful place, wonderful people, and it very colorful in so many ways. Even the clothing that the women wore. Haiti has been a very poor country, but the women are very strong there. And even if they had, a hard time finding fashionable clothes, which of course they did, they found ways. I mean, even of putting a patch on another fabric, and it would just kind of blow me away when I saw what they were doing and how I would never have thought of doing some of these things. They also went to the river to wash their clothes and then laid them out on the ground, and it looked like a huge collage. It was just very inspirational.
So it's very interesting. Here is a poor country,
Yes.
but very colorful. And
innovative.
Because one of the things I've noticed from your exhibit is your paintings are very colorful. The
Yeah.
variety of colors
Yeah.
that you use in your paintings is just amazing. And do you feel that
Oh, there was very much an influence there. Haiti, I'll never forget. It's
Yeah.
just a marvelous place.
yeah.
And so that was a huge influence and changed a lot of my aesthetics.
So it's interesting. So you were studying art. You were going to museums and seeing what a lot of other artists were doing. You were
Right.
traveling around. You went to Europe
Yes, a
as
lot.
well, and Australia as well.
Yes.
And so through all these experiences, when do you feel like you found your style? When do you think that you finally broke through with that?
Oh, well, I don't know that I actually broke through. It's a very gradual
Kind of an
change.
evolutionary
Evolution,
process?
yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
But there was a time when I did change rather drastically, and I went to, I decided to make a study of women's issues. I just decided that I wanted to actually sort of force the viewer to confront and come out of complicity and also comfort, and kind of, stimulate thoughts about the painting so that they really had to study it rather
Yes.
than just passing by for a few seconds.
Yes, yes. Now it seems like because one of the things I've noticed in your work is even though you started as inspired by abstract expressionism, your work has evolved, and it seems like styles have changed as abstract expressionism, of course, was a huge stylistic movement in the mid 20th century, but now in the 21st century, it seems like artists are reintroducing
That's right.
representational, people or
Yes,
objects into work and this
figure,
kind of thing. And you've changed
Right.
in that way too. Is that
I
correct?
have. Yes, yes. I just felt that there were a lot of social issues that I felt art had a real place for, and that it would be a thing for more study. So I have introduced the figure in a lot of my work now, and I went to the Greek myths to reinterpret those. They have been subjects of painters from ancient past, but always by men. So what I decided to do was to reinterpret it in our time and from a woman's point of view.
I see. So maybe, I don't know, are we at a good place to recognize our underwriters at this point?
We certainly could.
Okay, go ahead. I'll let you take that, Mark.
Sounds good to me, Guy. Guy and Ruth Kjaer are chatting about their art and an upcoming exhibition at the Westfield Athenaeum. But we're going to take a very fast break to acknowledge our underwriters that make programming like this possible. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach, and we'll return in just a moment.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley, with convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut. Visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
I'm Mark Auerbach. Join me every Friday at 8 a.m. for Arts Beat, where you'll meet interesting actors, directors, designers, and musicians here in Western New England.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Athenaeum Spotlight with Guy McLain. I'm his co-host, Mark Auerbach. Guy is chatting with Ruth Kjaer. She's an artist about to be on exhibition at the Westfield Athenaeum. If you've missed a part of today's program or you want to catch it again or share it with friends, you'll find it archived on YouTube at WSKB Community Radio's YouTube page. So I have a question for Ruth. The works that are being exhibited at the Anthenaeum, Did you create any of these specifically for the Athenaeum exhibition, or were most of these in your catalog already?
Well, I would say most of them were in the catalog already. I just, am in my studio most every day working, and so it's just a continuous flow, I guess you'd say. And so I didn't really specify, this one's going to be for the exhibition. It was just a constant growth.
But you told me that some of the works, some of your newest works,
Yeah.
are in this exhibit. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
So it is cutting edge works.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting that the amount of work you've created is really tremendous. One of the things about this exhibit is there's a lot of paintings. I didn't make a count, but there's well over 30 paintings in this show, and some of them are very large paintings. I'm amazed on how do you do these really. I mean, some of the canvases are like 7 or 8 feet by 6 or 7 feet long. How do you go about doing a painting of that size?
Well, there's a variety of ways. I paint on the floor sometimes, on unstretched canvas, other times on stretched canvas. Or like the largest painting, which is about 6 by 8 foot, I started on the floor, and I use different techniques. It's not all with a brush, but we can get to that later. And then I will raise the painting so that it's maybe clipped to something to hold it up, and I'll work on it that way. But I've also stopped working on a painting, had it stretched, and then go back into it and paint on the easel or something that can lean against a wall or whatever.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you say that the canvas gets stretched, what does that mean?
Oh, well, the canvas is just limp when before it's stretched. So in order to get it around a frame or whatever you want to call it, a stretcher, you have to staple it to a form.
And usually that's just like a wood structure. Is
Right.
that correct? Yes.
And so then you just,
And so in other words, what you do is you stretch the canvas out
Right.
over the wood structure so that it stays nice and
Tight,
taut. Yeah, nice and
yes.
tight. Yeah.
and then I even in that form, I do raise and lower it from the floor to the easel, back and forth. Sometimes I let paint drip. Sometimes, and so I will raise one side of it and let the drips flow down. The title of the show is Anthenaeum, the Golden Rain, and that's from the
The Greek
Greek
myths.
myth.
Yes.
and the story about her. I use a lot of gold in the work and let it look like golden rain coming down and sometimes just dripping.
Now, one of the things I want to say about this, and jump in, Mark, if with your observations. One of the things is one of the reasons the Athenaeum was very interested in putting the show together was because of the fact that it takes on social issues. It's also art. I was just amazed at the variety and the. I've never, I go to a lot of art museums. I go to a lot of galleries. I try to stay up on what's going on in the art world. And one of the things that impressed me so much about your work is that it's so original. It really, it combines like abstract expressionism, with neo-expressionism, but yet you've developed a very unique vocabulary, and it's very interesting how you talk about putting paintings down the floor, working on the floor, dripping, allowing the paint to run down the canvas, and you can actually see that on these canvases. It's really remarkable on the variety of different textures and qualities that you get because of these different techniques that you use. I mean, I think the one thing that's very interesting is I think a lot of artists just basically, they take the brush and the easel and they're just brushing the canvas, painting whatever they want to paint. But to me, it sounds like what you do is so much more varied. You do everything from brushing the canvas to pouring paint, dripping, splattering paint on the canvas, doing a lot of things like that. And those are things that developed with abstract expressionism. Right. Is that correct?
Yes, but also I use a lot of things to build up the surface so that I have a very textured surface. And I wanted to point that out because it gives a lot more possibilities to me in using the brush later. I put on these substances that, like I say, builds up the surface in different ways, and then I let that dry. I go to the hardware stores a lot. I love hardware stores, and find different substances that I'm using in different ways. So it opens up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, you told me about one thing that you use. It's called skid text. Is that right?
Yes, right.
Yeah, tell us about skid text. I'm just intrigued by this.
Yeah.
That this is a material used in a work of art. But yes, tell us about that.
Well, skid text is just a substance that painters, regular house painters, used to add to the paint. For instance, in painting around a swimming pool, so that people don't skid.
So in other words, it's something you would put around your swimming pool so you don't slip with the wet surface. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is how it's actually. That's what it's made for.
Yes,
right?
but people, when I go to the hardware store, sometimes they'll ask me, "Oh, what are you using this for?" And I'll say, "I'm making a painting," and the eyes get pretty big. Like, this is the usual thing this is used for. I have also used something called great stuff.
Great stuff. Oh yes, tell us about that.
And that's a substance that's very sticky. You have to wear gloves to use it, but I do, because it comes out of a can, spray can, and I'm just use my hands to form where I want it to be on the painting.
Now, and great stuff. That's used for like caulking, like windows and things like that.
It's a sealer.
It's a sealer. Okay, but you use it to kind of form, because I've seen where you where on some of your paintings there are like little bubbles and things that are created by the great stuff.
That's the great stuff.
And then you paint over that, But
I'm hoping it will come out to look great.
The great stuff name, make it great.
Yes.
Yes. But what's interesting about it is it makes the painting, it gives the paintings almost a three-dimensional quality.
Right.
The textures that you have, your paintings are not flat.
Right.
Your paintings have all this texture in them, and I love that. It gives a whole new dimension to your paintings that I think is very, very interesting. And sometimes I've seen little sticks and little.
Yes. Oh, yes. I enjoy sometimes scrounging around, finding little bits and pieces of things. I might find them along the street or on the beach or whatever.
Yeah.
And I will occasionally use one of these little things on my work. It just creates another point of interest.
Yeah. And what I think is so interesting is here you're using a real variety of materials and a variety of styles, for that matter, and mixing these together.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that's very important, one thing that was made the show very appealing to us to do at the Westfield Athenaeum, was the subject matter. Because I think the themes you're taking on, women's issues, and it's hard. We hear about this in the news all the time. The women's experience, what they're going through, and the problems. Domestic abuse and all kinds of things like that. And it's very hard. I mean, we become kind of immune to it after a while. We hear about the news so much.
That's
what I think
true.
is interesting is that you have found a very interesting way of exploring women's issues today through Greek mythology.
Right.
Can you tell us about that? Because I think that's just fascinating.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I decided to do this was that abstract expressionism has, been used for 50 years, but it's now kind of edging out of that. And I felt, and going to social issues, and I had several friends who had been molested women, and they really encouraged me to tackle it. And I decided that I was going to do just that. And
But you can't just show that directly.
No.
That's not going to really mean something.
And so a lot of the work is a bit ambiguous, and I want the viewer to insert himself into the analysis of it too. So some of it is rather hazy looking, might look like in a dream state, a lot of emotional substance.
Yeah, and one thing I find about the paintings is you can recognize figures, and in your use of golden rain. Maybe we should talk about that
Yes.
here. The story of Danae and the Golden Rain is one of the main stories you use for you really do a series of paintings based on Danae and the Golden Rain, and maybe we should talk about that because I think that's such an interesting story.
Yeah.
Danae was the daughter of an ancient Greek king, and the Greek king had no male heirs, and so he went to the oracle to find out if he was going to have a male heir, and the oracle said, "Sorry, you're not going to have a male heir, but your daughter Danae will have a son.
Yeah.
But the problem is he will grow up and he's going to kill you."
Yes.
And so the king is like, all upset about this, doesn't know what to do about this, and so he decides, okay, what the solution is? I'm going to lock Danae in a tower, and the tower has a skylight. But Zeus gets into the story at this point. Zeus comes in and says, he doesn't like this king trying to change fate. And so he says, I'll solve this problem. And so he sends down his sperm in the form of golden rain that comes down, impregnates Danae. She has a child.
Yes.
The child grows up and kills the king. So tell me, and this is a story. I know. There's a very famous painting by Titian back in the 1500s on Danae and the Golden Rain, and many others. Gustav Klimt in Vienna around 1900 did a Danae and the Golden Rain painting.
Yes.
So tell me how you're using that theme in your paintings.
Okay, so yes, I have found that many of the Greek myths have opportunity to reinterpret according to our social issues of today. And I decided, since, I ran across this object of violence against women that is going on, that I really wanted to make an point of it in my work.
Yeah, and I think the Danae story is one that's just ripe for reinterpretation because artists like Titian and Rubens and all these artists that did the story of Danae and the Golden Rain, they did it from a male perspective, and usually Danae is just kind of laying out there, and you can see the golden rain coming down, and that's the and it's like, okay, great, nice kind of erotic painting or something, right? But what we don't think about in this is that women what choice did Danae have in this? Did
right.
Danae want to have Zeus impregnate her?
Yeah.
Did Danae want to be locked in in this tower, and not be able to, not allowed out? To me, and the thing about the way this story was presented in the Greek myths, it's like she's just like an object. She's not, nobody asks her what her opinion about this is.
Right.
It's all about the king, what the king thinks, what
Yeah.
Zeus thinks. But nobody questions what Danae wants here.
That's right.
And so that's where you
Yeah.
really started with this is, let's look at it from Danae's perspective.
And many different ways. So every painting is approaching that, but I've done it in a variety of ways, so that there are some paintings with the golden rain coming down from the top of the painting and so forth. But there are others where they're like, I have also used others besides Danae, like Eurydice and Orfeo, and
And that's the myth where Eurydice, she dies and goes to the underworld, the Greek world. When you died, you went to the underworld.
And Orfeo is so saddened by it, he is so in love with her that he begs and pleads to go down to get her back. And he's a singer, and he sings so beautifully that he is finally permitted to go down and get her. So one of the paintings is about that return.
That return.
Yes.
There, yes.
And also I've done paintings of rivers because the river Styx,
is a very important story in Greek.
which
Greek
is,
myth.
yes, also into the passage of Orfeo going down
Yeah,
to.
so the idea was when people died,
Yeah.
the Greeks felt like, you passed over the river Styx.
Yes.
And so you've used that as a
Yes.
theme as well.
Yeah.
And also, too, I was intrigued by your use of Andromeda.
Right. I did that.
'Cause Andromeda was, she was chained to the rock,
Right.
and there was going to a sea monster that was going to come and get her,
Yes.
and Perseus comes to rescue her, right?
That's right.
And the way you've approached that is because in Western culture, it's always the man comes and rescues the woman,
Yes.
right? And here's a classic case of this. Perseus, you have to have Perseus come and rescue the chained woman, right? And so you've looked at that theme
Yes,
as well,
right. And how it applies to opportunities for women today, and about women's personal feelings.
Yeah, you see so many movies today that still have this idea the man has to swoop in and rescue
Yes.
the woman, who's
Right.
in danger or something like this.
Right.
And yet this story goes back thousands of years here, and yet it's really something worth taking a look at.
Right.
And so you've also done some paintings based on Andromeda as well.
That's right. So the wonderful painting of Rubens in Europe and Germany. So, it's been a very, very interesting pursuit.
Yeah. I think it's intriguing. Here we're just talking away here. Maybe we need to stop for, Mark, do we need to stop for another?
Before we take a break, give us the dates that this exhibition is at the Anthenaeum and how people can get more information.
This exhibit will run through July 30th. So from the beginning of May, it's going to be up for 3 months. So it'll be up through July 30th. It's starting on May 2nd and ends July 30th. So we're really excited. We're trying to build a lot of programming around it at the Anthenaeum because I think Ruth's work is so varied and so interesting from a social perspective that I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to come in and really not only learn about contemporary art and see one of the most interesting artists working in Western Mass today, but also learn about Greek mythology and address social issues. And so this is a subject we just thought was great for the Anthenaeum because it has so many opportunities to explore from a variety of angles. So did you want to?
And I was going to say, you were talking about Eurydice or Eurydice, depending on how you pronounce it, and Orpheus. That is the subject matter of the Broadway musical Hadestown,
Yeah.
which will be in Hartford this fall.
And has it? And it's been
great.
used in a lot of a lot of operas have been written using
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
theme as well. So yeah, it's very. In fact, Monteverdi, the what's considered the first great opera, was written by Monteverdi, Orfeo, in 1607, kind of the beginning of opera, and it was the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. So I mean, it's a story. What's interesting is you were using a lot of traditional stories from Greek myth that have been used in art and been used in opera, Broadway musicals, films,
Yep.
and yet you're reinterpreting them in
Yes.
such interesting ways, and
Well, I
just
hope-
flipping them over,
Yeah.
looking at them
Yeah.
from a completely different perspective.
They just keep popping up those stories, in each age it seems, and I just felt like we have so many social issues, violence against women and other things, equal pay, all kinds of things like that. So I just wanted to get as much as I could.
To explore that.
To explore
And
that.
what I think is very interesting is your style, using some of the techniques of abstract expressionism. And one thing about abstract expressionism that I think is very interesting is that abstract expressionism introduced the idea of improvisation in art.
Right.
Always before, artists had always, whether we're going to do an abstract painting or a traditional landscape, they would go to, they put the painting on the easel, they put the canvas on the easel, and they'd, paint in what they wanted to do. And with Jackson Pollock, who is kind of the person who kind of, the artist who really kind of
Broke.
introduced abstract expressionism, he flung the paint, dripped the paint on the canvas, and the reason he felt that was a good way of doing it was because it gave a certain kind of intuitive quality
Yeah.
to the paintings. And then Helen Frankenthaler comes along and she says, I can apply that same kind of technique, but I'm going to do it, I'm going to pour paint, I'm going to water down the paint and allow the paint to kind of flow down the canvas in different ways there, which I think is very interesting. And then artists like, more recently, the German artist Gerhard Richter. What he does is he lays down paint and then he takes a squeegee and squeegees over the paint, which takes part of the paint away, so you see the colors underneath it
Right.
going through there. So so what abstract expressionism did was it brought an improvisatory quality into art.
Right.
And it seems like that's worked very, very well for you to explore, because it seems to me that it allows a painting to kind of take its own course to a
That's
certain
absolutely true. Yes, and it brings in an exciting sort of element to a work too, because there's a spontaneity about it, and it really appears that way when it's on the canvas. It gives a certain kind of excitement. So
that improvisational
yeah,
quality.
so I have used the ideas of past abstract expressionists, but done it in my own way, and then adding the figure to the work so that it does more than just abstract expression.
Yeah, the thing about it, abstract expressionism, of course, was a very important movement, but most of those artists were very dedicated to doing strictly pure abstraction.
right.
Of course, there's some exceptions to this. William de Kooning did a series of paintings of women, which is kind of interesting. That's another
Yes.
thing we could talk about is how
Another
William,
of my
William de-
favorite painters.
but he's a male artist,
Right.
And some of
Yes.
those paintings of the women he did are not the
Yes.
most.
That's
They
right.
don't show women in the best way, you might say.
There have been a lot of critics who have talked about them in a variety of ways.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But most artists of the abstract expressionist movement were doing strictly abstraction, pure
Yeah.
abstraction,
Yeah.
no subject matter. And I think it's very interesting that you are using the techniques of abstract expressionism.
Yeah, a variety of them.
Yeah, a variety of those, but bringing in representational
Right.
aspects where you can actually
Yes,
recognize
and I
certain
think
things.
that's kind of the direction that art is going right now.
In the 21st century, you think
Yeah.
a lot of artists are going that direction.
And it draws out a lot of different emotions. I mean, And I like the fact that art is moving away from just the comfort zone.
Yes, because abstraction, after a while, it seems like to me that abstraction has become a little decorative now. It's kind of like,
Right.
oh, you just,
Yes.
we look at an abstract painting, we've gotten used to abstract painting, and
Mm-hmm.
so now, we put an abstract painting on the wall, and it just is, pretty colors, and
Yeah.
that's, but, the abstract expressionists, when they were doing it in the 40s and 50s, it was really revolutionary.
Right.
But now it seems like a lot of amateur artists have kind of picked up on the idea of doing abstract art. And
Yes.
so they just kind of do pretty paintings of colors, and I think they've become
Yeah.
kind of decorative.
Right.
And it seemed like to me, I think from what I've seen from your work is definitely not just strictly decorative, even though the paintings are beautiful.
Yeah.
They're not decorative. There's a
Yeah.
lot of content.
Well, I want people to be able to go back and back and back to a painting and discover new aspects to it.
And that's my feeling of seeing these works. Every time I look at one of Ruth's paintings, it's amazing because I see something new. I see something new and different. There's so much variety and so much different layers in your paintings that I feel like every time I look at the painting, I see something that I didn't notice before, and I think that makes the paintings very, very interesting.
Yeah. I wanted
Yeah,
there to be.
I had a question for Ruth.
Yes.
You're one of the artists who works and lives in Western Massachusetts.
Yes.
What drew you here to Western Massachusetts?
Oh,
And,
well.
uh,
Okay.
and
I
how
have.
how do you find the creative community here in this area?
Oh, that's fine. Well, what brought me here was family, but I have lived a lot of places in my life. I grew up out in California, in the central very around Monterey, and then I came back to study in my college was in Des Moines, Iowa, and from there I moved several different states. Wisconsin was the final one before I moved here. And so to come out here from, they had a very, very active, Wisconsin was very active in the art scene. But, and while I was there, I had galleries all over, from Florida to Las Vegas to Pennsylvania.
We had one in Hawaii, I noticed.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
Hawaii.
yes. And then, of course, our time in Haiti, my husband and I spent whatever time he could get. He was a professor of art, and we would go there whenever he was off. So I've been in a lot of active communities. The thing I love about this area is that it seems to be, getting more active, and but also it's a great place to visit for not only art but music. In Tanglewood, Boston Symphony, the Boston MFA, and to get to New York is not all that difficult either. So it's just a great place to have the time I need in my own solace state to work on my work, but also be able to get to places that really stimulate it.
And also, you're based in East Hampton. You have your
Yes.
studio in East Hampton.
Right.
And of course, East Hampton is really taking off as an
That's right.
arts area. And do you find it interesting working in the East
Yeah.
Hampton community?
Absolutely, yeah, it's great. But like I say, even if you're in a small town, it's accessible to so many other places.
Right. Western Mass.
And I also,
we're very lucky
yeah,
that way, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Western Mass has a lot itself,
Yeah.
but and we can go in short distances outside of Western Mass
Right.
and find great
Yeah.
museums and great culture.
And exhibitions are forever changing, so it's
Yeah.
great to be able to get to these.
And you feel it's important to really stay up on what artists are doing
absolutely,
today.
absolutely. I just, really thrive on that too.
I have to say that's something that bothers me a lot is
Yeah.
I see a lot of exhibits where the artist, I don't feel the artists have done their homework. They've, they've looked at what's going on. So sometimes they're not doing things that, are kind of aware, they're not aware of some of the trends that are going on in art.
Yeah.
And, sometimes that's okay, but I think sometimes there's something missing there. And I think what's interesting about your work is, boy, your work is really kind of cutting edge. I haven't seen anything in New York that covers some of the themes of this in the way you do things.
Thank you.
That. So I think that's a very
Thank you for that.
interesting quality about your
Yeah,
work.
but I also like to take a European trip at least once a year to see what's going on over there. So, all these things, everything feeds into it.
Yes.
Even reading literature, everything leads into.
And your music background.
Yes.
You were
Right.
you studied organ,
Right.
keyboard. Yeah.
Yes, I played a pipe organ, and I had students. But in one of my moves, I lost contact with that. So that was another contributing factor to find another process that I could raise my family and also feed that.
That creative spirit.
Yeah.
That's one thing about artists is, artists are going to find some way of being
Yeah.
creative no matter what. I remember a quote where it said that you don't choose to be an artist.
Yeah.
Art chooses you. And I think it sounds like your story.
Absolutely, it really does. And there's no getting away from it.
Yeah, there's no getting there. Yeah.
We only have a minute or so left. So before we go, Guy, why don't you fill us in very quickly on some of the upcoming things at the Westfield Athenaeum?
Yes. Well, in addition to Ruth's show, which will be up, and we're expanding. Ruth's show is going to expand. It's not only going to be in the Rand Art Gallery. We're going to have paintings in the Great Hall, so it's going to be a huge show. But other things we're doing, we're getting ready for summer reading. Summer reading program is one of our most active programs, and I think people are going to really. There's going to be a lot. Now that we don't have the restrictions of access to the library and everything, I think we're going to have a great summer reading program. In addition, May 19th, we have the third Musicians of the Springfield Symphony Orchestra concert. We've done a series of 3 concerts this spring. They've been great. First 2 concerts was totally sold out. We had to cut off ticket sales almost a week before the second concert because we had already sold out the concert. And sales are going fast now with the third concert. So we've been really happy with this series. We hope next year we're going to have more of the same because this collaboration, the Anthenaeum collaborating with the musicians of the Springfield Symphony Orchestra has been really tremendous. And so we're looking forward to the third of our concert series and doing more next year. So that's what we've got in line. What I will say to people is we have so many programs. We have book groups. We have a culinary program right now if you're interested in food, nutrition, good health from food. You might want to check out our nutrition programs that we have ongoing. So that's coming up. And what I would say to people is go to the internet, go to our website. That's Westath, WESTATH.org. Just once a week, check out and see what programs we have because we have a variety of things offered.
That's great. And can people go to the exhibit of Ruth's work on the same time that they go to the Moso concert?
They sure can. Absolutely. It's going to be, the exhibit will be totally open when the Moso concert takes place. And I should say also, too, the art exhibit is open whenever the library's open. We're open from 9 to 8, Monday through Thursday, and 9 to 5 on Friday and Saturday. So when you're coming in to check out your book or your CD, you can stop by and check out the exhibit of Ruth Kjaer's work at the same time.
Well, Ruth, thanks for joining us today. It's really been
thank you.
interesting to chat.
Thank you
And
for
I
the
can't wait to-
opportunity.
I can't wait to go see this exhibition. And this wraps up another edition of Anthenaeum Spotlight with Guy McLain. I'm Guy's trusty co-host, Mark Auerbach. Ruth Kjaer, the artist, whose works will be on exhibition at Westfield Athenaeum, has been our guest. If you've missed a part of today's programming or you want to watch it again or share it with friends, it'll be archived on YouTube at WSKB Community Radio's YouTube page. Peter Coles has been our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach, and we'll see you next week with another edition of On the Mark.
I happen to like New York. I happen to like this town. I like the city air, I like to drink of it. The more I know New York, the more I think of it. I like the sight and the sound and even the stink of it. I happen to like New York. I like to go to Battery Park and watch those liners booming in. I often ask myself, why should it be that they should come so far from across the sea? I suppose it's because they all agree with me. They happen to like New York. Last Sunday afternoon, I took a trip to Hackensack. But after I gave Hackensack the once over, I took the next train back. I happen to like New York. I happen to love this burg. And when I have to give the world a last farewell, and the undertaker starts to ring my funeral bell, I don't want to go to heaven, don't want to go to hell.